Good morning, and welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and hers. For those visiting this congregation for the first time or who've just started to visit, we are so glad you're with us, and we hope that you will continue to learn more about us through our website and most weeks by joining us through our Connection Hour, where we can share more about those values we covenant to affirm and promote. Today, we will not be having our Connection Hour because we are having a congregational forum. However, we look forward to meeting you, and we hope you will take a moment to fill out a virtual visitor's card on our website. If you've been visiting or been a friend for a while now, consider moving into membership. We have a time to sign the book most times, the first Sunday of the month, but because we're in this virtual time when we're trying not to convene together outside of our regular groups, we invite you to just contact me or a board member and make an appointment to sign our book. This month, we have a lot going on as we do each week, and we invite you to look at our website, at our calendar, and also I want to mention a couple things. We will have a congregational forum hosted by your board today at noon. We have returned our Vesper service to weekly, and we will have that service this week on Wednesday at 5:30. You will be getting your donation statements if you are someone who has been contributing to our congregation in the mail later this week. And I want to say a thank you to those who responded to our call last week to donate some antigen tests so that those who have to take tests to visit loved ones in facilities are able to do so. That was wonderful to have that quick response, and we just want to say thank you to all who participated. To find out what is happening here, please go to www.mduuc.org and our virtual calendar, which is found under the News tab. You can get links and register for events there. Please contact me or our intern minister, Michael Macias, if you are in need of a listening ear, because we know this time is stressful. We also can offer financial support through our Minister's Discretionary Fund for those who are struggling. Asking is a gift you give our community, and welcome to this very special service celebrating our living tradition. And I want to say a special thank you as well to our Board of Trustees for all that they gave to this service on top of all they already give. Thank you and welcome.
Good morning. My name is Nasa Matt. I'm a member of your Board of Trustees, and I use she, her pronouns. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming faith community. We begin our services by reading our mission. We bring to life our Unitarian Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. Welcome to our service. We are so glad to have you here with us and hope you are keeping safe. As a result of the recent COVID surge, our programming will remain fully virtual until the end of the month. We are so fortunate to have the opportunities to connect in these times, and we truly hope that you will help us keep us connected by taking part and reaching out. Thanks for working to keep our community safe. In these ever-challenging times, we are here for one another. And welcome. It's good to be together.
I light our chalice this morning with the words of the late former U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, Paul Tsongas. He said, "We are a continuum. Just as we reach back to our ancestors for our fundamental values, so we, as guardians of that legacy, must reach ahead to our children and their children. And we do so with a sense of sacredness in that reaching."
Each month, we come together as a congregation to support a local entity in our midst who is doing great work in our community. Today is one of those Share the Plate days, and I would love to have us take a moment to listen to one of our congregants, Harry Miller, as he shares more about the institution that we will be supporting today.
Hi, I'm Harry Miller. Besides being a longtime MDUC member, I've also long been an enthusiastic volunteer at this month's Share the Plate recipient, Winter Nights Family Shelter. I've coordinated the tutoring program, and recently I served as board president. Winter Nights is a great grassroots organization. It started as a way to help a few families by providing a roof over their heads and food in their bellies at a succession of host congregations like ours. By doing that, we enabled the families to save some of their barely adequate income. We still do that, but over time, we've provided a combination of compassion, guidance, and discipline to help overcome the obstacles to getting back into housing. I'll be honest, during the lockdown, our strategic thrust was simply survival. But while we were surviving, we established a couple of new programs that have both really taken off. Our safe parking program in Pittsburgh is now the only such program operating year-round in the county. And that program has grown in capacity and acted as an on-ramp for several families to enter the shelter program. And our Continued Success program has helped several alumni families deal with short-term adversity, providing car repairs or utility bills when those things threaten their ability to stay in housing. Because as you probably know, it's easier and more efficient to keep people in housing than to get them rehoused once they've been evicted. I like to say that Winter Nights has a couple of secret sauces. One of them is our staff, many of whom have homelessness in their backgrounds and thus embody the balance of compassion and discipline I mentioned earlier. The other is you, volunteers from this and about 100 congregations around the county who contribute time and treasure to help keep the program running. And over the years, I've noticed the power of volunteers just showing up consistently and demonstrating to our clients that lots of people care about them and their families. And that seems to me to be a core value of this congregation, showing up and treating people with respect. So I'm asking you to show up now with treasure or time for Winter Nights. Thanks very much.
Good morning, beloveds. I am Michael Macias. I am the intern minister here at Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church, and my pronouns are they and them. This morning, we gather in community to hold the service of the living tradition, the service where we explore as a faith community who we were, who we are, and who we want to be. I love this idea of a living tradition and hold this concept as precious because it suggests that our faith does not remain constant, but continues to expand its understanding of the world, and in this opens us up to moving in new ways. Unitarian Universalism has a history of confronting the woes of the world, and alongside this, we have wrestled with the internal challenges of being a growing faith tradition. As we find ourselves confronting the challenges of today, we can look back and see that our Unitarian Universalist relatives found themselves in a similar space. This morning, I am reminded of the words of Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker, past president of Stark King School for the Ministry, who proclaimed that there is a shallowness that comes from each generation defining itself, assuming it can ignore whatever came before. Historian David M. Robinson, when reflecting on our faith tradition, suggested that the values we derive from our Universalist tradition include compassion, acceptance of others, and universal love. While we owe to our Unitarian forebears the emphasis on freedom of thought, intellectual rigor, and leadership in social reform. These values and our willingness to embrace the divine spark contained within each of us is what enabled two youth groups in 1954 to come together and illuminate a path towards a merger between the Unitarians and the Universalists. Amid our commitment to civil rights, we found our faith tradition in a contentious period that divided our denomination as Black Unitarian Universalists brought forth an agenda that reflected their quest for self-discovery within our faith tradition. This moment and its movement charted a course of which we are still on that calls us to confront the inequity that exists within our faith and within our greater world. As Unitarian Universalists, we owe a debt of gratitude to the women who were courageous enough to ask, do our UUA principles affirm women? The resounding no echoed across our faith tradition and served as the main impetus for change that in 1984 would bring about the principles of our faith and the establishment of the living traditions we share. All of this and so much more can be found within our history. From the roots of King John Sigismund of Transylvania, who embraced Unitarianism and adopted the act of religious tolerance and freedom of conscience, to our willingness to show up at Justice GA in 2010 and everything in between. We are a faith community that wrestles with and confronts the issues before us. Each of these moments reflect our willingness, even in the struggle, to explore our faith, expand our understanding, and open new pathways for all of our siblings to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. I love the idea of a living tradition. We can look back on our history and see our 7 principles being given life in our struggles and our works towards a more just and equitable society. And yet, there is more to be done. In this moment, we are being asked to radically reimagine what our faith can be, what it should be, and if we are to fully embrace this calling, we must be willing to bring our individual voices and create an echo chamber that collectively pulls them together and breathes new life into this living tradition.
Good morning. I'm Janice Davis, and I serve this congregation on the Board of Trustees.
And I'm Indigo Lewis. My pronouns are she and her, and I serve as the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. In the spirit of our living tradition, in which we recognize the births and deaths in our community, Janice and I would like to offer a blessing to all the children who have come into our world over the past 12 months.
For all the babies born into this world in 2021, born into the world remarkably different from years past, when the loving embrace of the extended network of family, friends, and community meant to hold you has been complicated.
Complicated, but not absent. Each birth, your birth, this year brought a new spark to us all, reminding us that this precious life continues to hold remarkable wonder. And as we are blessed by the babies of 2021, each a miracle of the universe, we offer this blessing to them.
Spirit of love and life, be with the babies new to this world as they come to know their family, friends, and greater community. Fill their days with the nurture and support needed to grow and thrive. Help us to listen to who they are in the ways that are not yet verbal. And be with all of us whose hearts break for the interruption of needed connection through the generations.
Spirit of life and love, may this new generation come to know that they are held in care by a much larger community. Blessings be, may it be so, and amen.
Amen.
As you leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness that you learn light your hearts till you return.
Hello, my name is Ron Anand. My pronouns are he and him, and I am excited to be here today with you to celebrate our service of the living tradition. What was that? What did I hear you ask? What's all the excitement about? Well, let me tell you. You know, we UUs are proud of the fact that our tradition embraces what others see as fundamental contradictions. Take our multi-religiosity, for example. Rests on the fact that all religions have some truth. Some might call it knowledge of the divine, even if it appears to outsiders that there are irreconcilable differences between Jews and Christians, Muslims and Hindus, pagans and Buddhists. And one of our seemingly central contradictions is the fact that we celebrate our tradition as a living one. What does that mean? Doesn't tradition mean doing the same things over and over again, week after week, month after month, year after year? So it's kind of hard to understand, but it's also easy. It's hard because it seems like that the only constant we have is change. But it's easy because we know that we're always changing, and maybe that's part of the excitement. You know, in my experience as a Star King Seminary student, I take classes with students from other faiths, and they don't have this way of looking at tradition. Their focus is on learning their faith's dogma, learning the doctrine, and then leading their congregations in how to live that out. But I would say that we UUs have a little bit more heavy lifting to do. We need to ask ourselves two things. First, we need to ask ourselves, what do we want to do with this faith tradition that we were handed by our ancestors and elders? Every generation has to ask themselves, how are we going to live out our faith so that it speaks to us today? What does our Unitarianism mean? What does our universalism mean? How are we going to practice our liberal faith? I invite to ask, so I'm going to ask you a question today, and that is, what does your UU faith call you to do? And I mean you personally, you sitting there right now in your lazy chair, in your room, on whatever device you're listening to me on. Your answer, your personal answer makes a difference because it helps to create our collective answer, which then constitutes our living tradition. And the second question that we have to ask is related. Is it worth it? You know, in this period of time where people are more and more skeptical of government and leadership and news outlets, and yes, even religious institutions, we have to ask, do we want to continue as a community of faith? Well, my answer to that is yes. For me, being a member of this congregation and this faith helps me to both build together and then to celebrate the beloved community and to celebrate our greatest joy in life, which is to be able to reach out to one another and to embrace each other in love. And in fact, that is the center of our living tradition, is love. And that's what I'm excited about, because that's what we're going to celebrate today. So I say, come on, let's worship together.
We're going to invite you to raise your voices wherever you might be and know that others are also raising their voices wherever they are, whether you can hear us all or not. And let's sing together, For All the Saints. The words will be on the screen. For all the saints who from their labors rest, who thee by faith before the world confessed, thy name most holy be forever blessed. Alleluia, alleluia. Thou wast their rock, their shelter and their might, their strength and solace in the well-fought fight. Thou in the darkness deep their one true light. Alleluia, alleluia. And when the strife is fierce, the conflict long, steals on the ear the distant triumph song, and hearts are brave again and arms are strong. Alleluia, alleluia.
Across our nation this week, people have gathered to bear witness as part of Holocaust Remembrance Day, to remember the 6 million who lost their lives and to hold their memory that it may never happen again. In this era of false news, it is even more important that we remember these truths. In these times when books which depict the truth of the events, including Maus, a graphic novel about the Holocaust, are being banned from schools, this community redoubles its efforts to help us remember.
As we take a moment to remember the victims of the Holocaust in a time in which we should not forget, I'm asking Rodney to light a candle as I share words that were brought to us by Beth Snortum, a longtime beloved member who we will name today as one whom we lost to death in 2021. Beth brought us these words in this day of remembrance, as she often did through the years. These are the words of Hannah Shanesh, a young Jew who gave up her life during the Holocaust. Hannah wrote, "O Lord, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crush of the heavens, and the prayers of our hearts." So let us take a moment for the prayers of our hearts and to redouble our commitment to be the bearers of truth and to hold the memories of that which should never be forgotten. Let us take a moment of silent observation. Through our acts of faithfulness, may we make these lives eternal, and may they never be forgotten. Amen. This is the time in our service when we take into the larger embrace of this loving community those joys and sorrows that are too great to hold alone. I am asking Reverend Rodney to light the first candle of gratitude to all of those who faithfully and quietly contribute to the minister's discretionary fund. Your care for this community has allowed us to provide a month of housing to one of our beloved elders who will lose housing this week. While we celebrate this, we also need a group of caring members visitors who could be willing to visit our member on a daily basis, and we're hoping to put together a care team for this month as he has numerous medical conditions and needs care and food and other assistance. If this is something that you can do, please email our intern minister, Michael Macias, at michael@mduuc.org as we extend the love in this community out at this important, crucial time. I'm also asking for a candle to be lit for all of those who are still struggling with the effects of the COVID-19 virus, and also a second candle to celebrate those who are recovering and who look forward to being in our midst again. I'm asking Reverend Rodney to light another candle. Among the things that had to change when we had to take everything virtual and make a lot of changes at the last minute in December was a dedication of some of our babies that were born adjacent to our community. And one of those would be my grandson, Oscar Teresa Takahashi Keen, who tomorrow will turn 1 year old, celebrating that. And I ask Reverend Rodney to light two final candles. One holds those joys and sorrows that remain unexpressed by words, but still in the sanctuary of our hearts. And the final is for our hopes and dreams for this world and all our continued aspirations for it and our willingness to act upon them. Thank you.
During this service, we take time to honor those we have lost during the year. Reverend Susan Frederick Gray calls this a communion of memory, where we hold not only those who have died, but their family and friends. In remembering these new ancestors, we celebrate their presence in our lives. We get to remember what they gave us, what they meant to us, and what they brought to this faith community. They are the before, and we are the after. When we say goodbye, we are also saying thank you. You are missed, and you truly mattered. This year, we say goodbye to
Beverly Borton,
Jeff Brody,
William Hicks,
Bob Loney,
Milton Matz,
Polly Paget,
Darlene Roth,
Mary Smits,
Beth Snortum. May we continue to be the bearers of their dreams for a better world.
I would like to invite you all into a space of focus, calm, meditation, contemplation, and what many call the deep ask of prayer. Great Spirit of life, God of so many names and no name at all, we come to this time together to connect deeply with one another through time, space, and once again, video screens. Great keeper of time, these times are tough. We are all pressed with the tiring struggle of keeping ourselves and our loved ones safe from a global pandemic. Many of us struggle with financial, housing, and food stability. Some of us have interpersonal relationships that seem past the point of any hope or repair. All these things leave many of us, including me, in emotional and spiritual tatters, longing for a day where the God of my ancestors could swoop down and fix it all up. Great maker of love, I have learned in this life that isn't usually how things work. I need this time together to remind me that in fact we are all vessels of holy will. We are all part of a faith tradition that values our collective might. We know that it is through our actions that we uplift each other to salvation, and equally we recognize it is sometimes our inactions that condemn ourselves and others to various forms of hell. In this moment of deep connection to each other, may we be reminded that our faith tradition is a collection of water droplets that has become an ocean. While it's hard to imagine that a drop of water matters to the ocean, we believe that each droplet can cause ripples which eventually break onto the shore. O Waymaker, together let our droplets create tidal waves. I pray for humility to listen to the droplets of others and heed their lived experiences, and I pray for my lived experience to be heard as well. I pray that we don't allow exhaustion to be an excuse for perpetuating harm. I pray that we become the answers we seek, that we find a way to embody the best ideals from our religious heritage, ideals that sometimes we mock. Great mender of hearts, please connect me to all who are, who were, and who will be. Create in me a clear heart, capable of love beyond measure, that like the water droplet begins with me, but whose ripples traverse time and space, amassing with other ripples from other droplets to bring about healing and transformation of this one precious and imperfect world. We lay all of these asks here at the altar of our humanity. And in the name of all that is holy, I say amen, ashe, and blessed be.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Hi. One of the greatest blessings that this congregation has is our members. These are the people for whom attending now and again when it's convenient just isn't enough. And especially in this time when people are sheltering in place, the world is so different from the world that used to be, to have people reach out and engage is a wonderful blessing. These people are so precious to us. And so these are the folks who have decided that they will join us in our community as members in covenant. So with great celebration and great joy, these are our new members.
Sam Hamilton,
Harinder Singh,
Cheryl Singh,
Rose Barreto Price,
Stacy Cranston,
Sage Agustin Strand,
Margaret Fuller,
Rosie Reed,
Casey Gardner,
Becky Iben,
Sally Bartlett,
Elizabeth Lasada,
Ashley Clay,
Kate Lenhart,
There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill. Together we will. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always a light. There is always in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. There is always in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always a light. There is always in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. There is always in the dark. Now are we ready to be it? To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, and be a climb this hill. Together we will. Be the child. Be the child. Be the child. In the child. In the light.
Hello, everybody. This is Steve Hirsch, and I serve on your board of directors. I have the privilege of being on our church board, and I use the pronouns he, him, and his. Each year, we conduct a service that reminds us that our faith, church, and congregation are ever evolving to address both current times and the future that's different from today. This is the concept of the living tradition that is a central tenet of our denomination. Today's service recognizes membership within this living tradition, honoring members we have lost, newly joined members, and births among our members. The changing face of membership is both a reality and also a sign of church health and vibrancy. Stewardship, the gifts of time, talent, and financial resources, exist within this living tradition. These gifts from members who have passed, many of whom were MDUC members for decades, were instrumental in building the church we enjoy and value. Current members sustain this tradition with their gifts, and new members are joining this tradition as they fully enter and engage in our community. And every gift that has been made, is made, and future gifts yet to be made represent important and sacred commitments to our church mission, programs, and community. They are critical to supporting what is current, but equally critical in ensuring tomorrow. They are both a pay it today and a pay it forward. So while we are still in pandemic and engaging virtually and hybrid, this living tradition is as critical as ever. Our church has always been more than a campus and buildings. The pandemic has underscored this. We adapt and evolve as we must, while staying in community and relationship. So while we support today, our generosity importantly pays it forward for the next generation of church members. This living tradition is as critical as ever. Your financial gifts are valued and matter. So if you're behind in your pledge and you have the ability to make those payments up, please do so. If you find that you're fortunate to have some extra money and you can donate it to our cause, to our mission, and find a way to do so, please do so. And of course, we understand that in the current times, there are members who do not have the financial means and may be struggling financially. Well, we acknowledge that, appreciate their membership, the value of it nonetheless. Please reach out to one of our ministers. When you ask for help, that is a gift you bring to the community. Today, let me ask you to make your financial gifts online because we are meeting virtually. Go to the church website, mduc.org, click on the Give Now button, or you can send a check to the church office at the church mailing address. Thank you so much for being in community, for staying engaged, and for your generosity.
Please join me in dedicating our offering. To the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings.
An island can't move until it does. In North Carolina, where I lived for 22 years, barrier islands frame the East Coast. And on the weekends in my 20s, we would rent a house and go and sit on the rattan furniture and walk among the high grasses which blew in the ever-present winds. A professor that I had at that time, Dr. Orrin Pilkey, was starting to talk about things, about how sands were shifting grain by grain, about how the sea level was rising just inches and millimeters at a time. And as he made these predictions, many scoffed at him. They said, "Islands don't move. The sea doesn't rise." They ignored him, and the leaders in the communities just went out and built structures out of steel and concrete, just in case, but to keep those islands where they were. They knew that islands didn't move. He warned them it would cause the beaches to erode faster, and they didn't listen. An island can't move until it does. An estuary doesn't dry up until it does. When I was in my 20s, I took a 10-day canoe trip through the Everglades, gliding across the mangrove swamps and among the alligators who were just a few feet away, sun-drunk. Other scientists were starting to predict that water diversion and population explosion and agricultural runoff could cause the vegetation to fill in these beautiful groves and make that great watery landscape impassable and impervious. In those days when I went through, the water teemed with birds and fish and other life that you wouldn't see anywhere else, including the elusive manatees. Those who made their living roaring tourists through the quiet otherworldliness in their airboats scoffed. How could such a wet place go dry? The Everglades are now half the size that they were a century ago, but the change has been almost too slow to notice until that first boat couldn't get through. An island doesn't move until it does. An estuary doesn't evaporate or dry out until it does. A religion can't change until it does. Slow changes can sometimes have fast endings. The shifting of the sands is so imperceptible, the collapse of the house off the cliff less so. In the 1800s, there were these women. Mary Stafford and Eleanor Gordon were among them, who were tapped by Jenkin Lloyd Jones, a visionary leader who saw that he needed a new kind of ministry in this muddy, rough, unsettled place that was the West and the westward white expansion across this nation. Those who were used to the refined venues of New England weren't interested in these pulpits, and so Jones had the idea that he could give them to these women. And they had ideas, too, that churches could be the basis of community, that they could feed people and house people and shelter them and teach them skills that would benefit them and their communities throughout their lives. That they could teach people that it was important to be well, not only in spirit, but also in mind and in heart. He realized that they could teach, that you could go beyond just the collection of the Christian scriptures, though those were important, and embrace a both and also embrace the other teachings of the lessons we learn just from living our lives day to day. And so, though the Boston Brahmin, as they were called, scoffed and said, "This is just a fad, it will pass," these women were part of this great movement towards what we now know as humanism, and what grew so quickly it soon became known as the problem in the West, and it changed our faith forever. Those men in Boston might never have imagined a world where a woman could sit as the president of our association, or where Black people and Latinx people and Asian people and people across a spectrum of genders could also lead from our pulpits, from our pews, and across our communities. And yet, all this is true in our living tradition. Today we know that those North Carolina barrier islands shift just a little bit every day, and that the waters in the Everglades National Park evaporate just a little bit more every day in this warming planet. And that changes in our living tradition also happen, even if they come so slowly that sometimes we don't even notice that they're happened until they have. That's how change happens. In our U.S. society, the grains of change around religion in general have begun a few decades ago as the excesses and abuses of institutionalized religion began to be aired more and more and more, causing many to move away in distaste. Media began to take up more and more of our time and other pursuits, and to tell us very subtly that community was a waste of time. We could build our own worlds without much need for interaction. In 2017, our then president passed a tax bill that took away the tax advantage for charitable organizations for many. And those organizations have always served in our democracy as a balance against the pursuit of individual wants. And that funding base has very clearly eroded, as it was predicted that it would, and actually as it was planned that it would. And in 2020, COVID entered our shores, creating changes that few would have predicted outside of science fiction, that we would live in a world where we wear masks almost everywhere we go, that we would not be able to come together as we have across generations, that singing would become something that would be so difficult to do together, one of the most basic ways we gather. An island doesn't move until it does. An estuary does not lose its waters until it does. A people cannot change until they do, until they broaden their sense of what they can be together. And religion doesn't vanish as a player in our world and in our society until suddenly it does. Some are predicting that will happen within the next couple decades. A slow erosion in the fabric of caring for one another has been happening, and we need to pay attention. If we care about this holy place, we need to support it. If we want it to thrive, we need to give it our time. If we want it to survive, we need to donate. If the sands shift, we need to have the vision to move the house before it falls into the sea. Counter the poisonous chemicals that are causing the grasses to multiply and taking the waters. Ours is a living tradition, and we celebrate that every year here. The problem in the West became the human-centered religion that many of us enter each day with joy, as we also embrace the traditions from our Jewish and Christian roots, and other world religions as well. The good news is that we are in a position to continue to thrive if we are willing to change and pay attention and notice and decide that being a community with all its glories and challenges still matters, that aspiring in a world where we know that change happens that we do not want still matters, that being what we are still is an important part for ourselves and also for our larger world. Often in this service, which happens the last Sunday of January, almost every year, it's one of our traditions, we celebrate the past, that handing down of traditions that Ron talked about. But here is what I'll say to you today. We need to celebrate the future by deciding that we are not going to let time just slowly tick away and erode what we have built so carefully here. That we will move on in these times for what they need. That we will stop the runoff of hyper-capitalism that is certain to dry the well springs of our faith as much as the agricultural blooms cause the noxious choking weeds of the Everglades waters. We need to greet this time with a new commitment to inclusion and also new ways of being together in the same way that the women embrace new ideas about what was faithfulness. We know about change. We've been through it. And we also know that we can pay attention to the investments we need to make. We need this congregation and we need this faith. And I can't spend this message today looking back because I think it's time for us to stop waiting for some other world that we used to know to emerge and to take hold of the resolve of hope and to move into the future that is around us now, to hold the values that go beyond individual desires and still speak of our collective liberation. 2 years have passed since we gathered in the ways that are most familiar to us. And in those times, we have gained many people who some of us have never even been in physical presence with. And we have lost many people, not only to death, but to the higher cost of living that continues to be true in this area. We have many people who have, in this age, become more quickly infirm than they might have in other times because of the medical shortages that have occurred during this time. And they rely on our virtual connections to give them what they may never experience again in person. We, who affirm this tradition as a living one, can make the commitments of attention and intention live among us. An island can't move until it does. And an estuary can't dry up until it does. And a religion needs its commitments for each age. And we are the ones to be the droplets of water that make the ripple that will allow us to celebrate who we are long into the future. That is the living tradition we celebrate in 2022.
We again invite you to raise your voices wherever you are and know that others are raising their voices as well. And know that we are together. Love will guide us. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Here are the words of our benediction by Orlando R. Brugnola. Here, find a house of welcoming. Here, find vision and hope. Here, be received as you truly are, unique and beautiful, your journey acknowledged, your love honored. Let us rejoice together.
Now we extinguish our chalice with some of the words that were shared on our YouTube channel, where over 65 of you gathered today to be with us in conversation during the service. We ask you to share a few words on why this faith is important: spiritual connection, acceptance, growth, shared values that ground and support. So let us take all of these out into the world, and let us do so in the spirit of peace. And we hope we will see our members in our congregational forum through the code that was emailed to you last week. Our visitors and friends are welcome to watch on our live stream, and we will be together again at noon.